All right, let me get situated in this chair. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Lacey Lavender. Glad to see you here, Little Season Fellowship. It's your first time here. I'm glad to see you here. I'm looking forward to having you here. To be honest, I hope this turns out pretty good for you guys. I kind of want to take I wanted to kind of do like a little intermission between chapter 6 and chapter 7 of Revelation. I want to kind of go over some things that I feel like were always interesting to me. I'm not sure how relevant the knowledge of these things is going to benefit us in the future. I'm not sure if we're going to even need to know any of this stuff. So I'm not sure if it's even going to even matter, but it's interesting stuff. And what I want to talk about is how during the Millennial Kingdom, you would have had free energy within these kingdoms, within the walls and within the areas of these kingdoms. It would have been very magical. So it would be about the best way to explain it for anyone that would kind of see it today. In the background, I made this kind of this image of this futuristic, but yet Roman Greco style futuristic image. And if we had unlimited power and unlimited energy, there's all I'm wanting to point out with all this is that there's a whole lot more we could do with our time. And it's not that we don't have the resources to do some of this stuff. It's that we're not necessarily taught about it. We're not shown it. It's not explained to us. We have to kind of go out there and find this stuff out on our own. And usually what ends up happening is we all know the same things. Like we all get taught the same stories. And what ends up happening is we grow up and we move on with our lives and we stop learning things, or we start learning specific things, but some people know things that other people don't know. But the interesting thing is when it comes to the one thing most people don't know, everybody has their own opinions about it. And that just kind of blows my mind a little bit. Let's see. Let me catch up here. I don't want to get too far behind. Ha! Yeah, no. Wendy's not a mod everywhere. However, I haven't really thought about a mod or having a need for one. Everyone that's in my chats are usually pretty good. I don't ever really need to moderate anyone. However, at some point, maybe, and when I do need that help, I would love for people like Miss Wendy to step in. She does a good job whenever I'm in streams and she's moderating. So it's good to have people in your corner, to help assist with the movements. You can call it a movement, I guess. It's a weird thing though, how anyone who does talk about the little season all kind of go through the same adventures in life. It's really interesting. You can't talk to one person or the other and not hear something you've already heard 1,000 times. Especially when it comes to talking to people that know this stuff. And one thing I wanted to talk about was tonight was several years ago. I ended up, let's see, let me change this screen here. Do, 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 do. There we go. That'll work. Several years ago, I came across a video of a guy out in the woods, and he was living off grid hardcore, and he had used two car alternators and built a motor out of them that generated 240 volts, and he was able to power his whole home and his entire little area. And I thought that doesn't make sense to me because I know how alternator works. I know how much power they produce, how much power they take to operate, and you can't operate a house off of that. And so obviously it's a hoax. That's your first thought. And on top of that, the dude's not showing his face. He sounds like a redneck. He's off in the woods somewhere. All you see is his trailer. But it is weird. It is powered with, you don't see anything, but it doesn't mean he didn't bury his lines or whatever. So you kind of brush it off, but then I started looking into it, and then I realized, I go back and I watch his stuff, and he explains it. These alternators in cars, everybody that drives a vehicle that takes gasoline, you know that thing runs off of that engine, but that engine gets power from the alternator. If that alternator, that alternator is what powers the electronics and all the other stuff. But that alternator essentially generates its own power. But the reason it generates its own power is because it's spinning. And to understand how this thing works, this video that I'm about to show you here, it's going to show you how a motor that works in the same principle as an alternator. The key difference with this is going to be that let's see. The key difference with this alternator or this motor is that there's no engine, there's no external fuel source. All this thing operates off of are microwave transformers that are found in any real microwave, and then in magnets and copper spoils or copper wire. That's what generates the momentum, the motion to for this thing to power up. Well, the reason I know this thing works is because I built one. The issue is, I don't think the world around me was ready for this, because I ended up going through a series of trials that ended up not good not in my favor at the moment, at that time. And so I'm not sure if I was ready to show all this, but I don't think I have to worry about it now. So either way, now we're past that, I'm showing you what you're seeing here is these are transformers, and this is just a block of metal that he's done pulled out of some, I don't know wherever he got that metal from, but it's not just any type of metal. It's a specific type of metal that he uses. What he's doing here is he's making a cylinder, and he's going to take that cylinder and he's going to embed magnets into it. The transformers are what they're going to do is they're going to act like magnets as well. And as this thing spins, it's going to generate this magnetic field around it. The transformers are going to, in a way, act like gears. So what he's creating is like a drive, like a actual cog and wheel drive, but it operates on its own momentum. Once it goes into motion, it don't stop until you make it stop. Well, what happens is, to maintain the loss of power that it outputs, he's going to recycle that power back into the transformers. So while they're losing or losing power, they're going to be constantly gaining power, which is why this thing is perpetual, and it'll sit there and spin forever. Well, this doesn't, and by itself, generate enough power to operate a home per se. So he applies a cylinder to it, like a drive shaft. Then he'll take that drive shaft and he'll plug it into like a 2400 horsepower farm style motor. A motor that we all know can actually generate enough power to power a whole home. What you're gonna end up seeing is something that could fit in someone's closet, yet power their whole house. Is what you're gonna see, and there's no fuel. There's no nothing to operate this thing other than just sheer magnetic repulsion. I guess is the best word to use for this description. He shows you everything step by step, which is crazy. This video came out way after I got in trouble about all this stuff. So regardless, I'm showing it to you now. Another reason I'm wanting to show you this is because I went over all this information a few weeks ago, and it's now gone. I don't know where that video is. YouTube just said nope. I think I had too much of his music playing in the background, and so they ended up blocking it or removing it, copyright reasons or something. I'm not sure, but that's why I don't want to play the music or his sound. But either way, that I'm just showing you what I've already shown for some people already. I'm just kind of explaining it a little different. Good evening, John, my brother. Good to see you. Good to see you. Goodness gracious. Cage Fighters here as well. Yeah, see, I have the whole squad is here. We just need Connor, a couple others, and we'll be all set. No, the more the merrier though. Here you go. You can see how this part here, this frame is built out of 304L steel. If for anybody that's curious what grade of steel this guy is using. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger. All right. Little seasoned family. So what you're seeing here are motors that generate power, and he's figured out a way to take modern current devices and kind of blend them together. So it's this old technology with new technology, but still it works and it produces power. See how close he gets this cylinder to these to the walls of this whatever, these four transformers. There's a purpose for all that. He's wrapping this thing up. Here we go. Oh yeah. Oh, he's putting the black tape on it so that he gets his his shaft perfectly center. It's really smart actually. That's the motor that I'm talking about. That motor right there cost about anywhere from $700 to $2,500 depending on how much power you want to produce. All of this right here that he's using to build cost about $300 when you consider the cost of all this steel, all this metal. And when this cylinder that he built spins, it's gonna spin that motor that produces all that power, and you're gonna see how he's gonna power a whole MacBook, a whole Mac Pro desktop computer with a drill and everything else. It's amazing. I know that's not a good drink, but I would be really tired from work right now if I weren't trying to caffeinate a little bit. I'm not a fan of coffee unless I'm outside in the cold. Um, let's see. Let's see if I can speed this up. There he goes. He's just building. He's just built. I'm just showing you how he's putting all this stuff together. All right, let's see if I can skip past all that. We don't really need to see him build. Y'all can go watch this video. I'll post a link in at some point. And you guys can watch the video. But this is just him showing you how he assembled this motor. And you could literally copy this thing and do it step by step. His method is a lot cleaner and smoother than mine was. Of course, I don't have necessarily equipment to build everything he has going on there. All right, so I'm gonna back this up, and I will hit this right button right here. This is amazing. Pearl, glad to see you here. We're gonna have John Fry live here pretty soon. You guys will probably like listening to him as well. He has a lot of good information to share. I like how he thinks and how his heart and mind go when it comes to the scripture. But man, this thing was so cool when I saw it, how he had put all this together and built this thing. Absolutely, absolutely. All right, Joffrey. Good to see you here, my man. Well, I do have. Little season family, let's go. Now, I'm going to say that this is level 2. We haven't even got to level 3 yet when it comes to the motors and the power that this thing can generate, that this man has done figured out. Now, what's interesting about all this stuff is every bit of this technology is Tesla patented technology. That's why you don't see it mainstream. Exactly. Why it's not mainstream. It's not just because they don't really want you to know about it, but because also it's patented. I guess so. Partly their legal reasons, but it's really deception, division. They just want to keep us ignorant. All right, these are 220 plus. Let's turn this down. I'll probably have that up. I've had that going loud enough, long enough. All right, here's the outdoor test. This is pretty cool. One thing, this kid or man, he will not show his face. So I don't blame him. Spinning. There's nothing connected to it. I know people might say, oh no, it's a video, it could be edited and faked or whatever. There it goes. He's got something going on there. Oh, he's got a water pump. Yeah, LSD. But I'm just sitting here thinking about that. I've read that like 3 times, making sure I'm understanding it. All right. Yeah, I need to turn this music down. Let me turn that back down. I will turn that mic up. All right. Can you hear me a little bit better now? Probably a lot better now. That I didn't mean to turn it all the way down. There we go. All right, I think I have it set now. Better. But yeah, so here he is. He's showing you now. He's running this computer. Let me get this other thing set up now. See, this thing is not. Trying to pull this other screen up here. All right, there we go. My boy dog is crying right now. I've got him in another room because my female, she's ready to mate, I guess, and he can't handle it right now, so I'm having to keep them separated. If y'all hear a crying dog, that's what's going on over here. He is, oh my goodness, I mean, it is terrible. You'd think he's in there done lost his best friend. All right, so if you notice, it says Liberty Engine 2.0 right there. All right, I want to show you 3.0 real quick, and then we'll move on to what I want to discuss when it comes to this, how this ties into the Millennial Kingdom. So if you noticed in that first video, I was explaining how just that cylinder and magnets themselves, that's not going to generate power. He's essentially taking this motor apart. He's going to put this thing together. It's not going to move at all. Yet it's still going to create even more power than that other motor that he just built that is moving. It's spinning constantly, which obviously anything that's moving, motor made out of metal like that, spinning over time, it's going to break down and fall apart. You're going to have to repair it and maintain it. But, not necessarily every day and all the time, but once in a while. When it comes to what he's about to build right now, it's not that complicated, but he doesn't go into that. He doesn't have all these moving parts. He's using the energy field that is produced when you take two magnets and you oppose them. They're north and south, and you try to push against that. The reason I'm showing you all this is, and I'll try to, if you could understand what I drew in my diagram that I'm going to show, is that it is how these cathodes, which we call cathedrals, generated power and spread it out through their kingdom. All right, let me fast forward through this because you guys can obviously type in Liberty Engine 3.0 or 2.0 and see how he builds all this stuff. Now, you can buy all this stuff online. I mean, if you can't go down to a local place and get these parts and this material, then you can just order it online and just build these things and go wherever you want to go and have power. And that's what's really neat about it. But there's a reason they suppress this technology. All he's doing is he's taking apart all the BS that someone else put on this motor. All this stuff that he's removing is the reason this motor at first would not produce the power that we're talking about. But by removing all these protocols, so to speak, it increases the output that this thing generates. On an alternator, they're called diodes. And when you remove the diodes from an alternator, it then generates over, I think it's like 1100 watts or something like that. I mean, it's some crazy number, but ultimately what it boils down to is that it ends up equaling out to about 220 volts when it comes into contained power. That's 220 constant volts that doesn't change no matter how much you pull from it. It just keeps producing the same amount of power consistently. I understand all this stuff because I've worked on a lot of, well, I mean, I can build airplanes, if that makes any sense, if that says anything. I don't want to go into all of that. I just want to say that that's why this initially made sense to me, but I had to try to replicate it before I could believe it. I had to see it to believe it, type of thing. Seeing this thing work, though, it's really wild. He's just showing you how he takes the transformer out of the microwave, which he just orders this transformer online. The crazy thing is, you can buy a whole microwave and take one of these out cheaper than you can buy this whole transformer, which goes inside that cheap microwave. It's really wild. Let's see. I'm gonna skip past all that. There's the wiring. There's assembly. All right, here we go. Make this a little bigger. Must have a lurker. You know, that could be my dad though as well. Well, my biological father. All right, let's see. It's telling me to open this up. All right, I don't need to open that. Okay, good deal. Yeah, we do have a good number of people. That's amazing, though. I'm glad you guys are here. This community is the best community. I mean, regardless of your ideas or your thoughts, whether we all agree or don't agree, the amazing thing about it is we can share it with each other and talk about it. And most of the time, we usually just look into it and see if we agree with it or not. But most of us, most people are pretty open, and that's the thing. It's not about just being open-minded to everything. You do have to have a level of discernment. It's about understanding the stuff or paying attention to the things that matter. It's like it doesn't always matter that everybody says the things you all agree with. What matters are the things they say that are right and are necessary. You don't hear this thing making any sound, by the way. I'm going to turn it all the way up. This is it all the way up, volume all the way up. Exactly. Yeah. Well, see, that's what I think. I think that they figured out how to a way to. I haven't got that far into it yet, but I believe I would. I don't know. I just have this feeling that they were able to somehow tap into the energy field. In the act of doing that, created a light or whatever, something to that effect. And it's not necessarily that the sun was necessary, yet it is, but it isn't, because at the same time plants were growing, flourishing, a whole day before the sun was ever even made. But if God's spirit isn't within that energy, I'm not sure that it would even work, that any of this could work. Now, all right, so what he's built here is he's taken this motor, and if you saw it earlier, let's see if I can back this up and show the picture. All right. Inside this motor is just simply, there it is. It's a Tesla coil. That's all this is. But they don't call it that. It's just a spool of copper wire, and then he has this. It's this like. There's a way that this thing is shaped, and what happens is as this tube sits in the middle of it, when he puts these magnets on it, it kind of creates this cogwheel going around this thing. It kind of ends up looking like, let's see if I can pull this up. It kind of ends up doing this number. But you don't, instead of it being side by side, they're overlapped. And so it's doing the same thing. It's just they're overlapped in this experiment with his motor. But it kind of just spins around. This thing just the magnetic field does. It creates like two opposing gears. And that gear ratio, however it works mathematically, I'm not a math whiz or genius when it comes to that type of stuff. I just know and understand how this stuff works and why it works. What it's doing, you have a magnet on the left side over here, and then on the far right side, I don't know if you can see my mouse. Oh, actually, I'm not showing you the right image. That's why you don't see it. Yeah, so right here we have the motor and this shaft going through it, and this shaft ties into these two transformers, and then you have a double magnet here and a double magnet here both on the left and the right side. Now, this metal that this bracket is made out of, it'll stick to the positive or the negative side of that magnet. It's not magnetized yet. What happens is they'll put one side on the north and one side on the south, and what ends up happening is this toroidal field ends up being created around this motor. Now, you can't see that with your eyes currently, like today. You could see that possibly when Jesus was around. Hey, you need to chill out, homegirl. Go sit down. Go get your bed. Go. Get in your bed. See, I get on this computer and they think, ooh, he's distracted. Dogs are clever now. They're not just dumb animals. Anyways, yeah, so it creates like a toroidal field. And what that toroidal field does, it generates power. And as you can see, according to his little wattage thing, it generates 229 volts. That's enough power to power your whole house. This little device right here. And in this device, it would work permanently, or at least until these magnets lost their magnetism. Now, if that's possible or not possible, I don't know. I've never had one of these motors, nor have I seen one last any number of years to know how well that would work. All right, let's see. Let me take that out of here. We'll pull this back up. All right, wrong one. There we go. All right, let's see. All right. So when Jesus went into the clouds, it came all the way back to earth and established his kingdom. The cathos or cathedrals, it would have been, in my mind, sort of like this image right here. You know, I'm not necessarily saying that you'd have walked in and saw all these colorful lights, that you would have saw all these lights in all these different colors, but maybe some people could. Okay, and these stained glass windows that this thing has, there. This is just an image. This isn't real, but they wouldn't have been stained glass. These would have been tied into those tubes that went up. We call them the pipes for the organs and whatnot. The way this thing works, though, is at the top of it, it creates this toroidal field, which is like this invisible bubble that just expands out over a large area. And in this image, you don't see the bubble, but let's see if I have one where you can. Okay, so well, we'll just use this for our imagination, I guess. But let's just say the reach, the electrical field reach of these bubbles. Let's see. This is the best I could do with this computer because they don't, you have to kind of tell it every little detail to make it make what you want. All I'm saying there is that this kingdom, these little buildings that we call cathedrals, would have produced this power that would have broadened out. And say, for example, your phone. If you were on your phone and you needed to charge it, you plug it in or you set it on a magnet thing to charge it. The point is, it's stationary and you're not going very far with it, or it's going to lose. It's going to be on battery, and then it can only last so long. Within the field, the toroidal field of this thing that it would have created, your phone would have been generized. I mean, it would have been full powered. Anything outside of that field, though, would have been like today, basically. As best I can explain that. And that anyway, so I fell into this rabbit hole somehow. I ran across this word and it just struck me as interesting. It was cathode. And I seen it in a book and I can't remember where I saw it. And so I was researching these cathedrals, this word cathode, and then I found out that that's where the word cathedral came from. So I started researching these cathedrals, but at the same time, I'm listening to people like JT Follows JC. I'm listening to Leaving Babylon. I'm listening to every person around me in the online YouTube community. They're all looking at researching the same things, and it's really interesting how all these people are figuring all this stuff out around the same time. This is a divine event that's going on, as best I could explain that. But I don't know why certain people figure this stuff out. But I would imagine day or night that it would have been glorious in these cities, in these towns that people lived in. It wouldn't have been like today where we're riding around, gasoline and loud vehicles and making all kind of just random noise, which does generate these frequencies that end up ultimately dumbing you down. it's overload for your sensory organs, I guess, to be in that type of environment. I don't know. I think that's probably one of the pleasantries behind living down in the South and being from the more rural areas. I wasn't clogged or polluted with too much excessive noise outside of nature growing up, other than playing on television and playing video games and doing other things that normal people do, I suppose. But for the most part, being out in the country and away from the city, it's a different type of atmosphere. It's a different type of setting. So it often feels really good to me. When I look at all these images, I'm not showing you here anything that's real. These are all pretend images, for anybody's clarification. I'm only showing you these to give you an understanding, a visual understanding, so that you can kind of pull it together. Exactly. A veil is being lifted. Definitely, Wendy. When I was homeless, there was such a spiritual connection to him, and he sent me so many signs of so many. Exactly. That's weird. It's weird how I say it's weird, but it is weird when you really think about how every person on this journey has struggled on one end, one at one point or another. For me, it was trying to share things that no one else really understood or knew without them thinking that I'm trying to one up them or something. I can't help it you didn't read this stuff. I read it and I looked into it and now I know it. And some people also like yourselves, I've looked into this and now you know it. But it's a stressful and struggle when you realize that there's no one that you can pick up a phone and say, hey, let me tell you about this, or let me talk to you about such and such. You're not going to believe what I figured out today, or what I learned, or what so and so said. And it's not about gossip. It's about talking about the scripture, talking about God, and trying to learn the truth about him and who we are. And all of this plays into that. All of this goes into into that, what we're discussing. For some reason, some people that have entered the Little Caesar community end up backing out of it. For whatever reason, they decide, or they start looking into it, or maybe they just don't have the time to look into it. I'm not sure what happens exactly, but they'll kind of revert back. And for anyone that thinks the new earth that God creates for us is going to be like this image, where we're just kind of reset back in time almost to where we destroy ourselves and reset, and all of a sudden we just go back out and just redo the same thing we're doing again. That's not going to happen. There's not going to be old stuff for us to deal with. There's not going to, I mean, you wouldn't have anything old in something that's all new, is all I'm trying to point out with that. But I can understand where people might look at that and say, well, that's your opinion. And that's your thought. And it's not, it's just, that's what it says. I mean, it's gonna be right now. He says there's nothing new under the sun. But if he takes that sun away and he takes that earth away, and then he puts a new earth with a new sun, how could there be anything new under that? I mean, old under that sun. I mean, it wouldn't make any sense. And so that's clairvoyancy. That's all that is. It's the lack of cognitive dissonance. And I don't know how to explain that any better than that to the ones that do have cognitive dissonance to this thing. This image here, when I saw this thing, it reminded me, the first thing I thought of was the sons of Japheth and Ham. Right after the flood, the world was divided into three parts. Japheth was given the north, Shem given the middle, and then Ham was given the south. We don't learn too much about what happens right after the flood directly from the Bible itself, the King James Version. However, the King James Version, as I've said before, is more or less written like a child's book or children's book. It's the short version. We already have limited attention spans. It's hit or miss to get someone to listen to someone talk on a podcast for 2 hours, let alone sit there and listen to you describe the whole beginning over the course of days. No one has time for that, or, so the Bible was written to shorten that down. What I'm getting at with that is that back in the day, you had other books like Jasher. Jasher isn't to take away from the King James Bible. All it is it's the long form content of what really happened. And what you learn in Jasher is that when these sons went out into the world, they found the cities that were remaining and left over and somehow survived the flood. Then they took these cities and they rebuilt them, and they became cities like Babylon and Egypt and all those other places like that. Then what ends up happening is that over time, they develop as a society. All of these little areas do. In Babylon, they developed really quickly. Actually, they developed so quickly that were building a tower that if you worked on that tower on a certain level of it, you probably had a dwelling to sleep in and live in up there, because it would have been too much trouble. It taken too much time to drive or even walk all the way down this thing. It would have just made more sense for them to just build little communities up this thing as they built it. This is how big this tower was. And this tower was so massive. I mean, there's no way it could be here today and us not be able to find it. That's how big this thing was, even if it were buried or whatever. It's why I understand, or why I believe what it says about it, that it was turned into a meadow. Like, it was destroyed down to nothing. You will not remember it. That's what the Bible says. So if you're not going to remember this thing, I mean, we're lucky that we even know about it. The only reason we know about it is because it's written about in the Bible. Outside of that, there's no other really any reason for us to know about it other than for your benefit of understanding the consequences of sin. All the people throughout Scripture experienced the consequences of sin, and we experience the same sins, the same consequences. We go through the same motions that they did back then, and it's not really much different today other than cultural norms. What ends up happening, though, is these sons, as they find these cities and as time goes on, you end up getting to a point where you have Alexander the Great. He's the ruler of Greece. He's conquering all the world. And we learn about him and we understand what he did and all that. But the thing people don't know is that we learn in, let's see, I'm going to pull this thing up over here. That's the wrong book. Let's see if I have it in my bookmarks. Maccabees. I don't know how I lost that. I had it in my saved thing. All right. We learn in Maccabees 1 that after Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, who come from the land of Kittim, had defeated King Darius of Persia and the Medes, he succeeded him as king. We learned that Alexander the Great, was at one point in the Bible. This is why in America, or in the English-speaking countries where we have the King James Version as our Bible, we don't have Maccabees in there. But the only reason we don't have Maccabees in there is because most of us go to a public school. However, if you grew up in a true traditional Catholic family, you more likely went to a Catholic school. But more importantly, you possibly, whether you did or didn't, you would have at least had a Catholic Bible. The issue is no one at a Catholic church assumes that Baptists and Methodists don't know and have this book. They just assume everybody has the same King James Bible. But we don't. Not everybody has the same King James Version Bible. In fact, where did I put it? Let's see. I don't know if this background removal is going to let you see this or not. But see, like, Yeah. So my Bible here, it's a 1611. That's what I wanted you to see. But I need you all to understand that that's not the year 1611. That's 611. It tells me 611 years. This is telling me this is the King James Bible as it were printed and written in the year 611 of our Lord Jesus. Great to see you, Connor, my man. Good to see you, my brother. Oh man, you're not late, bro. Of course, you already know. There's always that rewind button. Of course, you can always catch up later. You don't have to do that right now. Um, but what I wanted to point out with that is that not everybody has the same Bible, and so just because you have a King James Bible doesn't mean that you have the King James Bible. Now, I'm not saying the 1611 is the King James Bible, but out of all of them, it's the one I agree with the most. It's the one that most most resembles the Geneva Bible. Now, I have a copy of that one as well, but the interesting, I like this because I don't know, it's easier to teach it to people or to show it to people because they're already familiar with the chapters and the verses for the most part when it comes to the regular Bible in of itself. The point that I now, regardless of all that, the clarification there, Alexander the Great was from the land of Kittim. The reason that's not in our American or English speaking Bibles outside the Catholic community or Catholic Church Bible is because, like I said, most of us go to public schools and they want to tell you who Alexander the Great is. They don't want you to read about him. They want you to know their version of him. So now you know their version of Alexander the Great. And so we don't need to read this book. Well, it doesn't really kind of go into great detail about who he is. It just assumes you kind of already know. And what it does is it tells you who he is. Alexander the Great was a direct descendant to Esau. It's why this is so they didn't want it in here this way because they didn't want you to know that. Because when you learn and you about who Esau was, then you realize that wouldn't have necessarily been a great thing to be. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the end of the world or that he's a villain necessarily, although he was a conqueror, so you can call that what you want to call that. The point is that through this fella, we learn that we get 10 other people that end up creating the 10 nations of Rome. And that was the Rome that Jesus ended up coming into later on. And the crazy thing is, this is only one book. There's 3 of these. These books kind of go over in Maccabees. It goes through discussing basically the way I was envisioning it was these were the events leading up to Jesus's return. Imminent, like as it was happening, as if you were there just years after Jesus died. This would have been you reading this, and that's why I don't know why they don't present it that way in the Catholic Church, because you would think that they would have figured this out. But it's like truth in plain sight. People just don't go over that type of stuff. Oh my goodness. Paul, my man. Oh, my goodness. What a blessing. The usual suspects. I see. Yes. Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yeah, it's because we have this little seasoned family going on here. We are a growing community, and it is really an amazing thing. It's a wonderful that we can all jump in here and just talk and enjoy each other's company and time. Welcome, Paul. I don't want to get too far off track with my train of thought and what I was going over there. Let me see. I'm going to pull this back up. All right. They are causing a ruckus. Like I was saying, the new world won't have any of this. There won't be ruins to find. There won't be new buildings. It'll all be gone. It'll all be made new. But this would have been what it would have been like post flood. And then it would have been like that coming into the Americas for the Europeans. Coming into the Americas, seeing everything, it would have been like this. With the exception that I don't think it would have been this trashy looking necessarily. But this isn't Babylon. This isn't this isn't ancient Egypt. This isn't ancient Greece. This isn't ancient Rome. This is AI, obviously, but what the context of what I'm showing you here is that the Millennial Kingdom wasn't any of those other places, though I hear a lot of people compare it to those other places. Sometimes some of them even call it that, but that's not exactly what that was. Oh, amazing. Amazing. Well, shoot, I'm glad all of you guys are here. And I said shoot, just so that we're clear we're clear on that. Um all right. But is this what it would have been like also, I would imagine, post millennial kingdom as the events of Revelation unfold? What we'll eventually get to is the part where the little season begins. And when that happens, there are a ton of events that are happening. Like I said before, the Revelation is not just a book of prophecy of the future. It's not just future events. We learned that in chapter 1. It said it 3 times in chapter 1 that this book is about the past, present, and future. The key for you and me is to figure out when in time these events are taking place. Now, without having been there, we rely on evidence. We rely on key witnesses. And we know that we can rely on certain witnesses because obviously we have a apostle, a disciple, who has a book in this Bible, and he tells you in the first paragraph, that's Luke, that he wasn't there. I was not there. I didn't see any of this, but I'm going to write and tell you what people told me about it. So he's actually even giving you hearsay or secondhand accounts, but it's credible. They're all saying the same thing. And so and that kind of goes into what I was saying earlier about how you have everyone in this chat right now. And then you have myself and everyone that we watch and all those who aren't here that are talking about this stuff. We are all saying the same thing. The weird part is you have an entire society that's saying the same thing that we also used to say. The same thing everybody says. The things you were taught in school or the things you've seen on TV or in the news. Outside of that, the ones in this chat and the ones that we watch on social media and other places and talk about, the few people here and there are all the only ones that are discussing the little season. And so the point I'm trying to make is while you may have groups of people here and there that all agree to a certain thing, doesn't mean that just because they agree, it makes them right. And we don't seem to be able to keep track of that sometimes, especially when we're on the wrong side of it. And a lot of that comes from just the way we're taught and how to understand and comprehend information and in the way we're taught to study. I haven't seen one YouTuber or podcaster on this subject. I haven't seen one person in the chat just make me go, man, what are they thinking? I mean, they are not smart. I just don't have that thought. Everybody I see in this, they're all very well educated. But it's weird. It's different because your education, like Paul, for example, no more educated than his brothers or his neighbors. However, has chosen to read and discover things that other people either didn't have time to look into or just didn't know or even think about looking into it. Maybe they didn't care. Everybody has their own little reasons why they don't read this stuff. But it's just fascinating to me how the people that don't read it are the very ones who want to argue about what it says to the ones like all of you who do read it. And a lot of this stuff doesn't make sense until you do read it with people and talk about it and fellowship and discuss it and go, well, that don't make sense, does it? And then they, you get yeah or no or yes or whatever, or I was thinking the other thing. And, we start looking into, whys and hows and this and that. Where two or more come together, the Lord is present. Miss ma'am, you need to go lay down. You're just roaming around. Get in your bed. Get in your bed. Get in your bed. Sorry about that. I don't know if you guys are hearing her move around or not. She's pitter pattering around, and my dogs are in love, and they want to spread their divine love with one another. And I'm trying to prevent that until I can get that situation taken care of. All right, not to lose track of where I was at. Let's see. Yeah, that's pretty much that. So another thing I wanted to point out, and I meant to point out, I meant to point this out last night. That's what I was trying to say. Is that you have Jesus quoting from the book of Enoch. The reason that's so significant, it's not that it's so wild that, oh, amazing that he knew it. Well, everybody knew it. No, that ain't the case. It's not that everybody knew what the book of Enoch said. There were probably plenty of people that were aware that the book of Enoch existed. The issue came down to the fact that only a handful of people were allowed to read its contents. When Jesus spoke the words in it, it would have been like just some random person to them, but somehow he knew this book, and it would have been really difficult for them not to understand that the Messiah was the only one prophesied or capable of doing that. So it troubles me to think that they didn't know exactly who he was. And so the deceptions have to be really deep. They have to be really, really buried in there in order for it to have convinced them to betray him, to go against him. When you think about it, none of it really makes any sense. Like, well, why would they want to get rid of the one being, that had been talked about for thousands of years to come and save today? It really doesn't make sense. But then we don't realize how far Satan had his claws into society and into everyone. The other night, Tuesday, we went over chapter 6. And what we've been doing is I've been trying to go through this book of Revelation line by line, precept upon precept, and I'm explaining this in the same manner as I would if, say, any one of my kids were around me right now. I'd say, all right, guys, sit down. We're going to go over this book. We're starting right here. We're going to read it, and we would read chapter 7, verse 1. And then we would talk about it. Well, do you understand what that's saying? And if you don't understand it, we either have to go backwards or we go forward, but we move forward line upon line, and precept upon precept. Again, like I've said 1,000 times, all that's saying is read this thing for what it says. Once you understand it, move forward. As you move forward, just keep that momentum going, but don't change it. Don't change the context. Just read it for what it says. It will reveal to you all the things that don't make sense as you read them. It just takes time, a little time. Man, it is warm in my house right now, and it is cold outside, but I got that heat turned all the way up, I think. All right, let me catch back up with you guys. I don't want to get too far behind. before I move on into this subject. Let me catch up. I know Paul was busy. He had stuff going on, but he's listening. He's checking. He's doing his good deed for the day. And do you sing the little song when you do it, Cage? Hmm. It's because I love spelling that state. Let's see. Is he my neighbor? Oh, Florida. Low, yeah, yeah, that's right. It is Lower Alabama. Hey, welcome, Paul. Let's see. Oh yeah. All right. Now I think I've figured out what everybody's talking about here and where everybody was going with all that stuff earlier. All right. So I'm from Mississippi, yes. I mean, yeah, I appreciate that. I I kind of worried about my tone being too, I don't know, monotone maybe, but at the same time, maybe it'll, if it puts you to sleep, you can't necessarily hit pause or hit stop. So that's a good thing for me, I think, right? Let's see. Let's catch back up. Oh, the Gulf of America. Absolutely. Don't get it wrong. Now, it's no longer the Gulf of Mexico. Man, that's going to be really interesting seeing all the map changes. Gulf of America. That is weird how we've never changed it from Mexico to begin with. I don't know why we're doing that though. It doesn't really matter what we call it, does it? Mid job before we can move anywhere though, and homeschool law. Iowas are awesome in Arizona. Yeah, that's right. I don't know anything about the homeschool laws in Arizona. Now, that's one thing I wish I had done. I wish I had the courage to homeschool. I don't know why I didn't. I think it wasn't even that I just wanted to be around my friends and stuff, but I didn't want to homeschool because I didn't want to be different, I think. I just wanted to be like everybody else my whole life. I just wanted to be I wanted to have a regular job, regular family, regular life. That's all I wanted, just like everybody else. I've never wanted too much. But it's amazing though when I behaved as though I did, I got a lot. I gained a lot, but it took gaining a lot so that I could lose a lot. Losing a lot and starting over in your life twice is not the easiest thing to do, especially as you get older. So it's more important as we get older to make the best decisions we can make for ourselves. And I'm just kind of rambling on that, but that's the thought that I was triggered into when I saw you guys were talking about homeschooling. But I always love talking to homeschool people because they know so much. They're always wiser on things that just other people just don't even, I don't know, they just don't consider, I guess. They just don't consider it. I don't know why. But oh my goodness, Kingdom Pirate is glad to see you here. You just got to send an affidavit to superintendent mostly because. Okay. All right. Well, I will catch up with all of what you guys are saying here in a little bit. I do not want to get too far off track where I was going with my revelation stuff here. But for those that are just now joining and those that are going to watch this later on, the before we move on into this Revelation chapter 7, I explained I wanted to give an intermission. And so, what I was showing earlier was how we can today sort of kind of replicate the technology of the millennial kingdom. Now, I don't know how we could replicate it on larger scales. I'm not an engineer when it comes to designing those little motors and stuff, but I do understand the concept of them and how they work. And I'm not sure, like I said in the beginning, if knowing any of that is beneficial to us, if it even matters, if it's going to help us, if we're going to use that knowledge and information someday. I'm not really sure about that, but I do know that it's interesting stuff to learn and that we can essentially replicate that stuff today. They just make it really difficult. They just kind of take everything apart and piece it together. And while I was showing you those images earlier of the ruins, the technology we have today is this old technology. It's old technology that's been reverse engineered and twisted around to be able to be controlled and contained in a way that we're deceived into thinking that you have to pay for it, that you have to work endlessly, to make this stuff work. And you don't necessarily have to do all that. But the reason, like I said, I wanted to show you all of that is because while I'm reading and learning all of this throughout my life, I'm going through and experiencing all this stuff in real life as well. It's trying to understand this stuff. And it's really odd how you can kind of start seeing the comparisons. When you start researching energy, free energy, you learn words that you wouldn't normally learn, like cathode. And when you see that word at first, it doesn't really stand out a whole lot. What often happens though is for people like us, you guys in chat and myself, we'll see that word and go, ooh, what is that? What does that mean? And then we look it up and we go, well, where'd that word come from? I know what it means now. Where'd it come from? We just start looking backwards and you realize they're talking about these churches. and then I'm like, what? This doesn't make sense. And then you start looking at how all this stuff works. And then you have to learn other things. You have to learn about cymatic frequencies and how all of that works and how to contain it, how to capture it. And it's interesting stuff because all of this stuff was patented by Tesla, or Tesla patented stuff that was somehow stolen by the government, I guess. Whoever has it, and they've kept it hidden from us. And it's not like Tesla necessarily invented these things. Is that he was able to just simply take what was left behind and reverse engineer it to figure out how it worked so that they could replicate it. Essentially, once they figured that part out, that's when they were able to control energy, power, name it DC, AC, and all of that to try to, and then that way they could market it. Then they changed the world that we live in into a circle, and then they add a bunch of rules and laws to that big circle or sphere. And if you, the desire of this energy, want it, you have to abide and submit yourself to the laws and operations of this globe circular world that we live on, that we don't really live on. But you're subject to its rules and laws. If you play one part of its game, you play all of it. But then again, if you flatten it out and you reach over here on the other side and you hang out with God and the Word, what you often figure out and learn is that, hey, we don't have to, it doesn't have to be a struggle. It doesn't have to be the worst thing in the world in a day-to-day daily chore to maintain this way of life. It doesn't have to be blood, sweat, and tears, and it doesn't have to be at the mercy or service of others necessarily, without it being for the good or for the common good or for a genuine understanding. But what I mean by the service of others is we're working for money, but that wouldn't be the case. We wouldn't have to do all that if we didn't have to pay for this power, this energy. And so they just don't want us to understand how simple this stuff really is. That's why they educate us on it. And they change all these words and give us all these phrases like ohms and volts and watts and all of that, when none of that's important. I mean, it's not that necessary. I mean, yeah, it kind of is important if you're trying to replicate it, or if you're trying to add to it, or if you're trying to, do more with it. But it's not really that. It's not like I need to know all that science. I just need to know that you take this item and this item, put them together, boom, now your TV works. It's that simple. That's all I need to know. if it's dangerous, tell me that before I even try it. That's all. All I'm saying is that it's all really so simple when you finally look into it. The issue is education teaches us to not look into it in the right way. It teaches us to rely on people with agendas to tell us what's right, what's wrong, how to go this way, how to go that way. And so without separating ourselves from our education and not reading this thing line upon line, often what happens is we get misled by what it's saying. We latch on to certain words. We latch on to certain verses. And then a lot of times we go, I don't know, I don't like that. That doesn't fit what I'm already thinking. So we'll go back and we'll kind of piece it together to make it fit. And all I'm trying to say with that is that you have to erase that mindset. You have to remove it completely. And you have to come into this thing like you just walked out of the dark and the only thing you've ever seen is this book. And that's, at least for me, that's how it was. After having read it a few times going, man, this don't make sense. It just finally clicked. I don't know why. It just did. And then it's like, man, every time as I'm reading, I'm going, oh yeah, it makes sense. Oh yeah, I understand. Burning bush. Yeah, okay. I mean, all of that makes sense to me. It's no longer metaphors. It's no longer a river of lies. It's the truth, and it's infallible. It's like you can't, and it's like once you see it finally, it blows your mind. You're like, man, how can't these people who talk about this for a living see this? I thought about that today, listening to this fella. I've been following for 15 years. He's been preaching the same message for 15 years, and he's a doomsdayer. And it's neat because I'm like, man, are you ever going to move past chapter 13? I mean, do you know what chapter 14 says? Do you even know what chapter 15 says, or 16, 18, 20? There's 22 chapters, by the way, for those who get lost in when these events are happening. For those who are truly new to this channel and haven't been with me since the beginning, my content, I hope, has gotten a lot clearer and easier to hear and understand. So I don't blame anyone for not going back and watching my earlier videos. It's not like I have thousands of them to begin with, but what I was going over, and I'm not done with that series, by the way, is I was showing how I built this timeline. Let me pull this up over here where you can see it. I was showing a timeline. And this is a biblical, or what they call a biblically accurate timeline. Now, there are some numbers that you can add in here, and there are some numbers that you don't need to add in here. But what I'm saying is that in my earlier videos, I was showing this timeline. And one thing that was interesting is I built this timeline as I was reading the Bible. So I was just kind of using it at first to make notes for myself, mental notes. Okay, so that happened about 30, 40 years ago. Is it relevant to me now? Just like today, I'm looking at the world around me and I'm thinking, okay, that happened 200, 400 years ago. Is it irrelevant to me now? No, it's not. Okay, I'm moving on. And I've kind of like when the whole slavery thing. Yeah, it happened, I guess. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. There's thoughts on both sides of it, compelling evidence for both. Regardless if it happened or didn't happen, it's not happening right now. And it doesn't affect me. It has nothing to do with me. So I would be moving on. And so the same principle applies in my mind as I'm reading the scripture. I get down here to Genesis 1 verse 1. Oh, Adam. Oh, he's kicked out. This is how many days he lived. And then and as I moved forward with that timeline, with this timeline series, well, what I show is that once you get to a certain point, it's a little bit more difficult to start adding in these numbers. Now it's odd, and it's an interesting thing, and that's why I asked Paul the other day if he has read any of the Josephus stuff. I'm gonna be honest. That is a lot. That is a big book. I haven't read nearly half of it yet, but it does kind of clarify some of these missing dates that I have here, and I'll show the comparisons later on in that series, how the Bible and other books kind of line up, kind of plugs in these missing years. But like I said before, as you build it, you end up with 1,000 years that are just missing. They're just gone. Just took them away somewhere, and we don't know where they went. Well, the interesting thing is that I think the first thing that the first video I saw on it was that Exploring Tartaria channel, and she was talking about this missing 1,000 years, and I was like, holy crap, I was like, yeah, that's it. That's exactly what they were talking about. It just made sense to me. And then this here is just, I'll explain this another day, I think. But in this image, I know it looks like kind of like somebody with ADHD just drew all this because that's what happened. But these are just my notes on how these motors work and how they generate power. And eventually I'm going to get around to building one like the one he did that doesn't move. I think that would be respectfully neat. The whole idea and concept of the millennial kingdom little season is not just amazing, but it's probably one of the most important things anyone in this timeline or this time period could actually learn and talk about. Outside of that, it's anything else to me now just seems monotonous or mundane. I don't know. It's just not a whole lot outside of the scripture that seems interesting to me anymore, which is kind of sad in a way, because I mean, maybe I'd like to, hang out and talk about other things too sometimes, but I don't know, somehow it doesn't matter what I'm doing. I end up in thought right back into this going, what did they mean by, and after these things I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth, holding the four winds of the earth, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. And I'm going, huh. So they stopped the winds, so, I started thinking like that. And then, but that's what all this is saying, is that it says, and after these things, I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth. The four corners that I was referring to, for those who are really new to this, I can pull that up real quick, is this right here. I'm going to pull the one up with the moon. The four quarters are this moon map. And I know that those who are new to my channel, but have been to like Cult of Khan's channel, he has a moon map in his background. This is that map that he has. All that map is the moon, and I know y'all can't see that, but now you should be able to. Okay, so he has this map in his background, the Cult of Khan, Connor does. And this is the moon map. And what he has here is a map of the earth. And all of us have seen this our whole lives. We were just taught about it being something different. And I went over all of that in another video, but the four corners of this earth are, where is my pen? Are this, let's see, yep, okay. I can draw with that. Let's make that a little bigger. Let's make this color where y'all can see it. We'll go pink, that'll work. What I was showing in one of my other videos, all right, come on now, draw, is that the earth is like this. And our 7 continents that we live in are in this bottom quarter of the earth. You have 1, 2, 3, 4 quarters of the earth. And so what they're talking about is all of this. This is the earth they're talking about in the Bible, where we're at in chapter 7. That the earth they're talking about, and after these things, I saw four angels standing on the four corners of the earth. That earth is this earth that I'm showing you right here. That's this earth. There's this whole earth and they were standing they were in the four quarters of it. All right. So that's where they're talking about right there. Crazy thing is our world today, it's just simply this little area right here. So it's almost like God said, all right, Satan, you can have your dominion now, but I'm not going to give you the whole world this time. I'm just going to give you this little area right here. And that's us. It's all of us right here. The interesting thing in this, I was thinking about this and I was like, it's possible. We just recently figured out that there might even be other land outside of our little world. So it is possible that there are people going through the same things that you and I are going through, and they don't even know anything about us, just the same as we don't know anything about them. Especially if their governments and our governments are all kind of working together on this thing to kind of keep it lock and key, or under lock and key is all I'm trying to point out with that. But I'm not declaring that as a fact or as a truth. It's just, I'm just looking at this earth going, man, there's a whole lot of world left out there. I kind of wonder what they're doing with it. What's the point of it being out there? What's the point of containing us within this little bubble, this little dome that we're in? But now this isn't necessarily where our dome or firmament is. Our firmament would be way out here. Of course, there is a bubble over us, and like I said, I went over that in another one of my other videos, but I wanted to show you guys that because as I was explaining, that is the four corners that they're talking about right here. Our four quarters are just simply within our 7 little continents that we have, or eight, however many they say we have or don't have. And then, but the point of that, all of that there is to just show you that that's the part, that's what they would have been explaining and would have seen, And then when you move into verse 2, you go on, and I saw another angel ascending from the east, having the seal of the living God. And he cried with a loud voice to the 4 angels, to whom it was given to hurt the earth and the sea. He gave them the power to hurt the earth and the sea. Now, if you just stopped right there, you would say, okay, well, he's about to hurt the earth and the sea. However, it's saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, until we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads. Well, who are we talking about? For those who know a thing or two, we already know that they're talking about. However, reading this line upon line, you would assume you don't know anything beyond the line you're reading. And as you continue on, it tells you, and I heard the number of them which were sealed, and there were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. What this is going to go on to explain is that from each tribe, or there would have been 12,000 individuals who would end up growing up to be these 144,000 that become the servants of our God. And we call them the 144,000. That's 12. That 12 group of tribes end up being the purveyors of this Tartarian empire. Any of the Tartarian maps you end up looking at, the more authentic ones, the ones that are in Latin, those Tartarian maps will have people or names who come from these 12 tribes. what ended up happening when the millennial kingdom begins, these 12 tribes move out into the world, and it doesn't mean that that's only the only people living in that group or that area were from that particular tribe. You would have had other people perhaps blending in and mixing in within those areas. All I'm saying is that these areas, these nations or areas of land within these maps move around, not because the actual land necessarily always moves, but because these groups of people, these nations moved around. It's not like today where you say you're American and you know where everybody always goes to the same place. It can't be used like that when it comes to research and history, especially when you get into the genealogies. I'm going to use a lot of this going forward to kind of, explain the whole race stuff and try to explain that away and get rid of that whole narrative, basically. But that's what they're talking about right there. Is just simply the 12 tribes of Israel. And it says, of the tribe of Judah were sealed 12,000. Of the tribe of Reuben were sealed 12,000, and so on. And it goes all the way through all the tribes of Israel. Then it says, after this I beheld, and lo, a great multitude, which no man could number, of all nations, and kindreds, and people, and tongues, stood before the throne and before the Lamb, clothed with white robes, and palms in their hand. In context, as we learned in chapter 6, John is not necessarily physically dead, but his spirit is not in his body. He is in heaven right now. So we know that all of these events that he's talking about are things that haven't quite happened yet. So because we know that these are future events. The issue a lot of times is people will believe now everything past this is also a future event. And it's not necessarily. It's not all past this chapter future events. Some of it ends up being current to the writer. And also some of it becomes past to the writer. All right, now before I move on, let me see if I can catch up with the chat here. I don't want to get too far behind on what everybody's talking about. Goodness gracious. Now, one thing I haven't quite mastered yet is the art of this chat display. The way Tyler from Kingdom Within, Paul, and even I've seen Cult of Khan, like how when they're talking about and discussing chat or with chat, it shows up on the screen. So I will learn and figure out how to do that. YouTube has been my ally in all of that so far. So hopefully I can get to that point where I can get all that squared away. In the meantime, I believe I'm going to be pretty busy in a few days, especially when it comes to John Fry, because we got to get him set up on his new computer and get him going so we can listen and hear what he has to say about this little season. All right. So far, we've got we've had a pretty good turnout. Man, this is amazing seeing all of you guys in here. All right. Sacrifice my job in industry to preach truth. Technically, I'm still an executive producer, screenwriter, etc., but haven't touched it since discovering Millennial Reign. That's interesting. So Kingdom Pirate says that she's a screenwriter. And I guess that came from the previous conversation. I watched all 8 seasons over 157 times. What seasons did we watch here? Jenny Murphy. All right, let's see. All right, well, I'm going to go back up here and read this. I know I'm just kind of mumbling a little bit, but I'm just going to start right here. It says, so Cage Fighter says, who says we are even on Earth? We could be somewhere else. Yeah, we could. Yeah, I mean, we only know what we're told, really, at the end of the day. But does it mean that everything we're being told is everything that can be told? Little Season Fellowship says, Kingdom Pirates, I love looking at the maps. Those folks made for their books, and man, those two look like the other lands there. Oh my goodness. Yeah, let me pull that back up. So the other lands, that's right. They are right here. Ooh, that ain't good that I got that in there. I didn't save it. These are the other lands. And so this is what I was pointing out, or trying to point out to Jason Jack. This is the land we live in, and this is Pangea out here. So that's what I was talking about, Little Season Fellowship, when I was trying to explain that Pangea is still there. Whether or not anyone lives there or can live there, I'm not sure. But I also don't think it'll matter, because I don't think we'll ever go there. There's any reason for us to ever go there. However, the lands we live on are right here. And I know it's hard to see in this, but this is Africa. You have Russia right here. Let me zoom in on that. That's Russia. You have the United States right here, Canada, Brazil, Australia. The wild thing is there's this whole other place called Lemuria out here. You're not going to find that on a globe or anywhere, but you will find it in some maps, especially when you get to digging into the 13 and 1400 era maps. The wild thing is, I think that's where possibly the elite live. I mean, why wouldn't they? I mean, I don't know anywhere in America the elite live. You know where you end up learning, and you know where all the Hollywood celebs live, but no one really ever learns where Lemuria. I mean, not Lemuria, but where the true elites, like the truly most wealthiest of the wealthy. No one ever really knows where those people live. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a whole group of people that live out here in that place. But this is basically the world we live in. But what ends up happening, and man, I don't want to go over too much of that again, but I guess I will for this. Basically, in the middle of our world, if you were looking at this from the top down, the middle of our world is technically right around in there somewhere, and yet our world is, our center is over here. This is us today. But there's a reason for that. It has to do, and I'm not 100% sure on this. It has to do with, let's see. It has to do with these trees. So the giant trees years ago were massive. I mean, they were just, this is probably even not even accurate. We'll say this is 6 foot tall right here, and these trees would have been thousands of feet tall. They just would have been massive. But reason I'm pointing this out is what was going on. This is all pre-flood stuff. This is why none of this really is too terribly important. But for those that would be interested to know, when they cut these trees down, they no longer worked the same way they were working before. And all I mean by that is, at one time, these trees generated an energy, but that energy was contained within that tree, and then it goes out into every other living thing that's in the earth, that comes out of the earth. Flowers, everything would have that energy, and it would be emitted. You'd be able to tap into it, and they show you this in a way in the movie Avatar. If for those that have seen the Blue Aliens movie Avatar, that's kind of essentially how that would have worked. The issue is that when the angels cut these trees down, they now release all their energy out like this. It just kind of goes everywhere. And what ends up happening is, all right, so, oh man. So what ends up happening is you get the Aurora Borealis and other stuff like that. And it's not just the Aurora Borealis. That motor that I had shown you guys just a little while ago, I'm going to pull this back up. The way that works, the reason I was showing you that motor is for many reasons. You do what you want to do with that information. Let me scroll back down and make sure I haven't lost anyone with that, what I'm talking about. Okay, so what I want to point out right here is that those motors, the reason I was showing you the reason and how they work and all that is our world is like a giant battery or magnet somehow. In the middle, that is not what I wanted to do. Where you have the north, it's positive let's just call it positive. And out here on the outside, you have the south, and we're going to call it negative. So already you can see we have opposing, magnetic frequencies going on right here. What ends up happening is you had a giant tree in the middle, and then you had several, actually, let me move that over. Then you have several of these smaller trees going around this world. And then you would have thousands of trees, around. Some of them would be bigger than others. Well, what was happening is when they were cut down, when they were cut down, they released this energy. And when that energy that they release gets up into the aether, it changes the color of the air, or the energy in the air. That's the Aurora Borealis. That's what that is. A lot of people will look at, here, let me pull this back up. My dog is in there he is having the worst life right now. He is upset and crying. I showed it. I had it in there. There it goes. Oh, not what I was trying to pull up. I don't know why it's doing this. All right. So when we see images like this, we'll say, oh, that's the Milky Way, and a lot of people are taught about what that is. Yes. Giant clock battery. Yeah, absolutely. Like a toroidal field. Absolutely. I'm getting back to, I don't want to lose my train of thought with that. So I am going back to that, but I wanted to point out that this what we call the Milky Way has nothing to do with any of that. So for those who think it might have something to do with that, it doesn't. The Milky Way is separate from the way these trees function, the way these energy fields function. But what that is, though, is that is a scar in the actual firmament itself. That's what you're actually seeing. That's where the waters flooded down from when they came down from above. The other water that came from below came from, and I'll show that right here, it came from these craters. We see them on the moon, but where you don't see them is on our maps. The reason you don't see them on our maps, they don't want you to know about them. But these craters are not on the moon. They're on the earth, and they're not craters. They're fountains of the deep. And that's where the water from below came from. So what we're seeing on the moon is where water would have burst out of these craters. These were the fountains of the deep. And so, but like I said, that has nothing to do with the power or the energy or release from these trees. So what's happening in our north is you have this energy coming out of this cut down tree. Now this is happening everywhere. And for whatever reason, it's happened where it's happening around us. is it's doing this now. I don't know why it's doing this. I can only contribute this to the millennial kingdom. There's no other reason. There's no other reason I found that explains this. But what ends up happening is this toroidal field ends up doing this all the way around the earth. And then what you have from a 2D plane version, let's just say this line represents the flat plane. Let's call this the firmament. What ends up happening is this cut down tree right here is doing this, and it's now creating a bubble. And for whatever reason, we're now contained inside this bubble. But this bubble is not necessarily the hard firmament that's above us. It would be more like a jello-y, watery substance that you would end up having to go through to get out of that. But it's not because the bubble is a thing that would just exist. It's what happens to the water molecules in the air as they mix in with the aether, and how it connects to the toroidal field. And so this is what's happening. And for some reason, I guess that our governments have figured out how to get out of this. The issue is that they can't get out of this part. And so now that they know they can't escape, there's no point in they can't really live out here. There's no point in really trying to leave out of here or do any of that. But they will give us SpaceX, so that we deal with that. Yeah, it's like do you think the moon is physical? See, that's the thing. It has to be. There has to be a physical element to it. The thing is, I look at the moon and the sun now the way I look at these batteries, as we were calling it a second ago. Man, I cannot believe I left all those drawings on there. But let's see if I could clear that up. Where's a clear one? Well, I will just have to deal with my suffering here. What I think the moon is, I don't want to use the word plasma because so many people have used that word, but that is the best way to describe it. It's neither physical or not physical. Just like if you take a water bubble, like an actual bubble, it's kind of physical, but it's not physical. It's the kind of the same concept. The difference is it wouldn't exist. It can't do its thing without the aether. The aether has to be up there for the moon and the sun to also stay up there. But what pulls them around are these currents. Like you'll have a current over here that moves this way. You'll have a current over here that moves this way. You'll have one that moves this way and one that'll move this way. They all move opposing each other, but they all kind of move around this thing. Well, because of this one particular tree right here, I'm not exactly sure why this tree is any more significant than all the other trees. It pulls these currents around, and you could see it if you could see it from like, looking straight down, you would be able to see these currents and how they move within the oceans. These ocean currents aren't just the way the waves decided to move the water that way. These currents move around the way they do because of the magnetic pull of this center cut tree. But like I said, the only reason it even, I don't know, I guess that's the only way to explain it. It's the only reason that we have this field or this bubble around us. And it's also why when you look at the stars, you don't really see them before you see them through that bubble layer. So there's like a layer between us and the firmament. And that layer there is like seeing the star through water. It's why it's not clear to us. When we look at it, we don't see what they describe in the Bible. We don't see 1,000 eyes in a circle and all of that. We don't see all the lights and everything. We just see the shimmering of it through that through that little field that's being created up there. The actual firmament itself, though, if you could see it without the disruption of this field, you would see what they described in the Bible. And that's just my opinion on that. But I have various reasons that have led me to that conclusion, is all I'm trying to say with that. So, yeah, I guess that's my best explanation as far as what the moon is. But I noticed this. I saw Kingdom Pirates' video, and I was watching that, and I was like, "Oh, yes." It says you're saying this. You're talking about the same things. You're using different words sometimes, but it's the same thing. You know, just like I had never said clock battery, but that makes sense. You know, and I understand how all that works. But that's how all of this is working, and that's why everything is happening physically, what's going on. Now, to further build on that, let me see. I'm gonna pull this one up. Now, this is just a little fake cartoon version of all of that I just was showing y'all before. I seen someone mention this the other night, I think, in Paul's channel. They were talking about the clock in Prague. This is the clock in Prague. Essentially, the clock in Prague is this right here, circling around this right here. And what they're showing you are the celestial seasons. So what this does is this circle moves. And then it'll move around this earth, and it'll do this thing. It'll move 12 times. And each cycle lasts 2,160 years. The only problem with knowing that is a lot of people will try to start yours and my timeline with the same timeline as these stars, but the stars are made before you and me. But this here is only important when you're trying to understand when in time these events actually happen. Like, if knowing what year and date is very important to you, then yeah, this would be important, because what this shows you is that this is moving. Now, this is a reflection, a mirror image, so it's actually moving this way now. But let's see. Right now, we would be essentially, we're pretty close to this. So today, if we were trying to build a timeline off of this celestial clock in Prague, you would say 500 years ago was roughly 1520. I'm going to say 1526 from next year. Okay. So 500 years from last year would be 1526. All right. No one's really going to argue with that. The difference is it was also possibly the year 1001. But if you were ignoring this and going based off the clock in Prague, what ends up happening is 1526 is actually 21. No, I did that wrong. 2160 is the year 2160. Celestially. Now, this number has nothing to do with you and me, but it does have to do with the star pattern and how it revolves around us, but also how it affects this toroidal field, or whatever that is. I think what happens is when Jesus came to earth, we were going from one season to a new season, or celestial season, or age, not season, age. Essentially, I'm saying that before Jesus's day, if you were building a celestial timeline, you would say this is year 1 and this is year 2160 of this area, and then the next year, 2161, this thing moves. And now you're starting over with a new timeline, and you're now at year one going to year 2160. So it would, in this happens 12 cycles before it goes all the way around. And what you're seeing there is this circle right here is going to move. When we enter Jesus's timeline, when Jesus entered into the world, that season was changing. Now, I was showing this in another video, but that circle does move slowly. It just doesn't move rapidly. The reason they would talk about things like climate change and global warming and all of that is because as all that moves around, it's also shifting the frozen lands, and it's shifting all the lands. Like the seasons, the normal everyday or month-to-month seasonal changes are shifting over the lands. And so what I'm saying is that I'm not sure how accurate that is, but there are communities that seem to think, and I was one of them, and I'm kind of still one of them. But when the millennial kingdom ended in our current 1526, that would have been the same thing as, say, the end or the beginning of a new celestial age. Now, if you break that down, I'm telling you that it's 2061 years is how long this thing lasts. But if you just rounded it down to the year 2000, a quarter of that would be 500 years. That 500 years is why there are a lot of people, especially me within this community, that take the time we're in now, and if you date it back 500 years, it puts us at 499 years into the little season. And so now we're technically in the year 499, and next year would be the year 500. But if the seasons are based on the celestial age, then essentially that's 1/4 of that is 500 years. It's plain and simple. It's not that hard to equate that. The issue that I run into this is that I'm 42 years old, and next year is the year 2026. My son is 18. He's not married yet, doesn't have kids, and I hope that is not the end, or the time of the end. And it may or may not be. I don't know. I'm not prophesying that one way or the other. I'm just pointing out that these dates here are only relevant to understanding when in time we are as far as like the millennial kingdom stuff goes. All right, now let me put that away. Hopefully I was able to explain that without getting too sidetracked or too off course with what I was discussing there. But I did two full dedicated hours to the moon map and how the quarters and how the world moves and Earth moves around and stuff. The only parts that I didn't go over before were the parts about energy and how all of these buildings, like these cathodes, would have created these mini toroidal fields all over the Earth. Like anywhere the Tartarian buildings were, you had these energy fields, and that's why I was showing you the motors for those that are just now joining, and those who are going to watch this later and are only catching it or starting into this video now within the last few minutes. Earlier I was showing you these motors so that I can explain to you, how our current toroidal fields and energy fields around us are working, whether we have figured out how to tap into them and utilize them or not. That's on each and every one of us to figure that out, come together and make that work. All right, now, so I kind of went off on that again. Let me see, back up. Oh man, 5022 freedom, my God. See, I think you can start booting. All right, so to be clear, I don't think you could serve Buddha and be okay with God. What I'm saying is the traditions of like doing the little things that don't really hurt anybody or affect anybody would be okay with God. Just so I'm clarifying that 5022 freedom. But that's all I was saying to that. Like I'm not, going too far off into that. I'm just pointing out that he's just referring to Colossians where it was talking about how certain things don't necessarily upset or anger God necessarily the way we would think that they do. Not to say that we should go out and practice these traditions or that we should practice other things and try to do other things. All I'm pointing out is, is just that it's not like the worst thing, I guess, to do. Now, worshiping Buddha, of course, would be a no. You don't know whether you have traditions. If your traditions lead you to worship of other gods, then yeah, obviously your traditions then need to be cut out. That is not a good thing, and that would anger our God. I guess to make that clear, it's that your traditions, if they don't lead you to sin or lead you to worship of these other gods, for example, if putting up a tree doesn't lead you to worship in Santa, then I guess putting up that tree is not going to hurt anything. It's just a thing you're doing and that you like to do. And that's all. That's all I'm trying to say with that. I wasn't trying to say that you could go worship other gods and you'll be fine. I know someone commented something like that. I guess they thought that I was referring to that. I just said, yeah, right on. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead, think that if that's what you want to think. But no, 5022 freedom. To be clear, that's not what I was trying to say, and so hopefully I clarified that. If that's what you were thinking, that's what I meant. By the way, it's not. But anyhow, let me move on from that. Let's see. Age of Aquarius. Yeah. Actually, when it comes to the names of the ages, I'm not exactly sure on all the names of them. I didn't really pay that much attention to that part. But other than that, I would say, man, it is good to see. I mean, I'm glad to see you in here, 5022 Freedom. I haven't seen you in one of my lives yet, but yeah, I'm glad to see you here though. Hopefully, you'll have some time to go back and, maybe watch the earlier part of this and catch up to where we're at now. If not, that'd be fine. Let's see. It's so much better, I think, the way, those other fellas do it when they show you guys' chat on the screen. So, what did you? Happy day of life. Yeah, exactly. Oh wow, happy birthday, by the way. I just saw that. So Kingdom of Pirates, happy birthday. She is a young 47. You only have an eternity left to go. So that's amazing. Yeah, I don't have any grandkids yet though. I don't. I want some one day. Hopefully I'll have some one day. I just hope that my son makes it through college and and kind of gets settled before we move in before we get into that. But I have great nieces and yeah, actually no great nephews yet, but I do have some great nieces. So I'm looking forward to being a grandparent one day. I hope that we have time for that. We at the end of the day we don't really know for sure how much time we actually do have. We know we're roundabout and pretty close to these dates, especially for those who have built timelines using the Bible and using Scripture and whatnot. But outside of that, we don't really know how much time we have. But I will say, I swear, I hope that we have a ton of time. I want as much time as we can because I would love to see a lot of the stuff I've seen the chat in, not only my chat but in other people's channels, where where we talk about coming together, uniting, meeting up somewhere or something like that. Even the flat Earth people, they have their own little conventions and whatnot. So I don't know why the Little Season family can't get together and have their own little conventions as well. You know, so man, okay, good, man, good. 5022 Freedom. I'm glad. Yeah. So yeah, I had to clarify something. Something else is I was like I think I had said that John was dead. Like I didn't mean like dead, like he's all the way dead. I just meant like if your body doesn't have the spirit in it, then it's like an empty vessel. It's like a dead body. So he was, for all intents and purposes, his body was dead on earth while his spirit was in heaven. Only he comes back with a new glorified body along with all the other saints and stuff. So yeah, yeah, no, and always. By the way, any one of you guys, if you ever watch any of my stuff and there are corrections I need to make, I'm not a the per, I'm not the I'm not ever going to sit here and try to say that everything I say is absolute 100% correct or the only truth, the only possible way this could be true. All I'm pointing out are showing you the things that I've learned over the years and how it all fits in with scripture and how it all kind of makes sense when you just sit down and you simplify it and just kind of look at it and go, oh, it works like this. You put this in there and that moves this way and it causes that to move that way. And if you kind of start simplifying this stuff, it just kind of all fits in. Oh, wow, that's pretty cool. And the world that's coming, we don't need Satan system for any of that. Absolutely. You know, and I talk about that with my helpers and stuff as we're riding around at work. I'll point out that, I'll point stuff out and I'll say, you notice how they're doing that or how they're moving this way or how they're looking around that way and how we spin this and how we spin that and how we work for this. And then I'll explain to them how if you did it the opposite of that, and then you aligned yourself with scripture in it, that often what ends up happening is you end up kind of seeing how the millennial kingdom would have worked. The only problem is if if you don't absolutely get rid of sin, you will have to rule with a rod of iron. And so it kind of makes sense to me when I start thinking about how Jesus would have been on earth. He wouldn't have been just a super easygoing guy, but he wouldn't been necessarily a pushover either. He would have been firm in his stance. But I have this belief that the people of that kingdom, for the most part, whether there are still people alive today that kind of belong into that, DNA group of people that descended from the millennial kingdom period, whether or not there are people in that or not, I think that it's, very well possible that some of these, some of us or some people ended up kind of, I don't know, just, I don't know where I was going with that thought now. I'm trying to actually read what you guys are saying and trying to catch up and finding a good place to jump into, but without going back and reading every one of them, it just feels off to do it that way. So I'm trying to keep up with you guys, but you guys are saying a lot. Y'all are talking a storm. Now, this is awesome though. Now I get to go back and read all of this and enjoy what you guys have said here. Let's see. In person, I'm extremely quiet, shy, introverted. Don't even like going out. And would be very submissive to a mate, but on social media, with the truth. Yeah, it's weird. I think maybe might quite be the opposite of that. Out in public, it seems like I'm just a super outgoing guy, but that's because I'm at work, and that's part of the character I got to play in order to, make people feel comfortable and have them understand what I'm doing as far as the work that I do as a plumber. But when it comes to when I'm not on the clock and I get off and I go home, I just kind of seal up in my little room here. And if I'm not nowadays, I'm trying to work on this live stream. But when I wasn't doing that, I'm reading these books and trying to understand what they're saying, and I'm watching these videos. I've got all these screens going, so I have these videos and going, and I'm just trying to, like, okay, so I'm trying to read this, I'm trying to learn that, and I'm just moving from one thing to another. And then finally you get to a point where it's like, what else could be bigger than this? I mean, you learn the earth is flat and you're like, whoa, that's crazy. What else are they hiding? And then it's just like one thing after another. So yeah, it's pretty cool how we all end up kind of circling the same pattern of discovery whenever it comes to learning about this little season. When it comes to being outgoing and introverted, I'm not sure where I'm at on that, but I know sometimes I feel like I want to just get out there and just talk to everybody, but then also at the same time I'm like, man, I just want to be left alone. But I think a lot of that comes from the fact that most people are not the type of people that you would love to just be around. And so you do want to be just left alone. And in that, but does that make me an introvert? I think about that sometimes and I go, maybe I'm not an introvert. Most people aren't the people I actually want to be around. However, if everybody in the world was the same as this little season community, this little season family that we have going on here on YouTube and in the social media world, then I don't think I would be able to call myself introverted. I mean, I'd be out hanging out with somebody, talking and building this, building that, just enjoying the world. I don't think I would be introverted then. So I think a lot of that comes from just the world around us. Let's see. Oh, Pearl, your husband is a plumber too. Oh, well, yeah. So as well as I do, uh, and I'm not saying it because I'm a plumber. I'm saying it because of all the other plumbers that I know. Plumbers are not idiots. They have you. It's like you have to have I don't know, to do any type of trade work, plumber, air condition, AC work, or electrical work. You have to have a good mind, an intellectual mind to be able to figure that stuff out. So it's kind of like you have an engineer's mind. We're just too lazy to go to college for 8 years, I guess. Instead we just do 2 years. Some of us don't even do that. We just jump into the trade. But that just goes to show you not everybody needs all that education. And so it's pretty cool, I guess, is all I'm saying, that the trades it's not necessarily the worst thing to be into nowadays. But I will say this though, anybody that's in the trades, it's yeah, they I want to say this. If you're in the trades, then you kind of already know what it would have been like for Jesus being a kid growing up. If you were raised by a tradesman, you know what kind of life Jesus probably had growing up, is all I wanted to point out with that. I find that fascinating when you really think about it. His father was, he was a builder, he was a carpenter. You can only assume or conclude that Joseph taught him those skills. He didn't just come out knowing how to do everything. I mean, he was a person, he was a human. Whether he had the ability to just manifest thought and learn everything without guidance is relevant, because why would he even waste his time coming down as a child if he was going to just know everything already anyways? The point of that was so that he could experience everything and be able to look at you and say, I'm not telling you to do anything that I also haven't done myself. It's just him being a good leader. If God's going to rule over us, he's been trying to do it. He's been trying to do it for thousands of years, and people just keep not getting it. And so eventually he's going to come down to us. And when he does, he comes in the form of his son. And So now we have the Son of God here showing us all of his how to do things, the right way. He's going, hey, you guys just can't figure this out. Let me show you how simple this is. The problem is you got a lot of people that want it to be complicated. So the more complicated it is, the more reliant you are on others. And it's not that we don't want to or need to rely on each other. It's that you shouldn't have to consistently, with every single thing. You shouldn't have to rely on others to be able to breathe. Just breathe. you know Once you figure out how to power your home, you shouldn't have to continue to pay someone so that you could continue powering it, is all I'm trying to say. And when it comes to Jesus and the millennial kingdom and the millennial reign, that's ultimately what it would have been like. All right. All of that being said, I see a couple fellas and ladies are getting ready to go to bed. You guys have been awesome hanging out with us, with me tonight. I just this week has been a blessing. I'm learning a lot every day, obviously, like all of us. And while I'm learning, with all of this display and all of this, I want to be able to just show and talk about the things that I've just learned across my journey into this. Maybe some of the things I've learned other people haven't learned, and so maybe you'll benefit from it. But there are things that I don't quite understand yet, or at least there are things I don't know how to explain. So the cartoon images and all of that, for the future people that'll say, oh, that was fake. We know that that none of that is important. What's important is the understanding behind it. And so hopefully we understand where I'm people in the future from this point forward will be able to look at the night sky, look at that moon and go, huh, and just have a different thought about it. And then when you go back and read scripture, go, the world was very different. These lands have changed and shifted around so much over these years. And if you go back and watch my earlier videos, we've been kind of building up to this and showing with each video the phases. I'm trying to show you the phases of time and how it affects everything. That being all said, you guys have been amazing and wonderful. I love this community. Thank you guys for being here. Those who have come here from other people's channels, awesome shout out and good looking out to you guys, man. Thanks for giving me the shout out, Connor and Paul, and for showing up tonight. You guys are amazing, and that was a wonderful blessing. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better gift than that. Kingdom Piratess, Jenny Murphy, Pearl, Little Season Fellowship, Donut, Cage Fighter, all of you guys being here this evening. Lacey, Lavender, John Fry earlier. Man, a blessing. Like I said, you guys being in chat, hanging out with me, it helps me keep my thoughts aligned. It kind of gives me courage to do this. I know that most of you guys watching this kind of already know a lot of this stuff already. So you're already aware that we're doing this for the ones that don't know anything about it and the ones that are new to this. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and we'll pick this back up again on Tuesday. So like I said, we're going to go Tuesdays and Thursdays, and if you're Central Time, it'll be 8 to 10 Tuesdays and Thursdays. And eventually I would like to do a nightly thing. It's just I've learned over the last month that I can't do that right now, and that's just because of the way my career is, my real world job, and the things that I got going on in life. I got to be able to balance a little bit of both, so I'm not overwhelming myself. I'm going Tuesdays and Thursdays, and that's just for those who want to try to kind of keep up and be there when I am going live. But for those who can't be there, then at those times, obviously, hit that replay button. You guys have been awesome and amazing. I love you very much, and blessings to everyone. Thank you guys. You guys are amazing. I will see y'all next Tuesday.